Have you ever lived somewhere completely alone where not a single person knows you? A place where the language feels foreign, the culture feels distant, and there's nobody you can truly rely on. Have you ever tried waking up every single day in that kind of loneliness? Because that's exactly what Riku Miura and Ryuichi Kihara went through. When they first became a pair, they only had each other. No friends, no family, no familiar faces. Just two Japanese skaters trying to survive together in a quiet Canadian town called Oakville. And strangely enough, the routines that changed their lives forever were incredibly simple: packing lunches, grocery shopping, walking through a mall together. Those ordinary moments eventually became the foundation of Olympic-level trust. And today, that's the story we're diving into. Oakville wasn't some glamorous sports city. It was quiet, peaceful, almost too calm. About 30 minutes from Toronto, filled with suburban neighborhoods, lakeside walking paths, shopping centers, and families enjoying slow weekends. But for Riku and Ryuichi in 2019, it felt completely unfamiliar. 17-year-old Riku left Hokkaido behind and arrived there alone. 26-year-old Ryuichi had spent years searching for the right partner before finally ending up in that same town. When they officially teamed up in August 2019, they quickly realized something terrifying. Besides each other, they had nobody. Almost no Japanese speakers around them. No childhood friends, no classmates, no support system outside the rink. There were coaches, there was training, but after practice ended, real life became just the two of them against the world. And that reality shaped everything. After training, they went back to their apartments. If they wanted to eat dinner with someone, it had to be each other. If they needed groceries, they went together. Day after day, week after week, year after year. For 7 straight years, that ordinary routine became their entire world. People often focus on medals, emotional press conferences, or dramatic performances on the ice. But honestly, the real story started in the quiet moments nobody saw. The lunches, the conversations, the late-night grocery trips. Those tiny details built something stronger than technique ever could. One thing many people know about Ryuichi is that he loves cooking. He's comfortable in the kitchen, knows how to use a pressure cooker, and often made curry or homemade meals. Riku, on the other hand, wasn't really known for cooking. Ryuichi even gave her a rice cooker once, hoping she'd start making meals herself, but she barely used it. She could make omelets, sure, but beyond that, cooking just wasn't her thing. And slowly, a natural pattern formed between them. Ryuichi cooked, Riku ate. It sounds simple, almost insignificant, but when something like that repeats every day for 7 years, it stops feeling like a task and starts becoming part of your identity together. Eventually, it became normal for Ryuichi to stand in the kitchen and ask, "What do you feel like eating today?" And it became normal for Riku to answer honestly instead of politely saying, "Anything is fine." That's how you can tell a relationship has become deep. When people are strangers, they hold back. They avoid inconvenience. But when trust forms, honesty becomes effortless. Suddenly you can laugh and say, "Curry again," without awkwardness. That comfort became their language. Sometimes they even brought homemade lunches to the rink. Imagine that scene for a second. In a Canadian skating facility filled with athletes speaking English, surrounded by coaches and skaters from different countries, 2 Japanese skaters quietly open handmade bento boxes together. Maybe leftovers from last night's curry. Maybe something Ryuichi cooked early that morning. It wasn't fancy. It was Instagram-worthy. But emotionally, it meant everything. Because inside those lunch boxes was proof that they still had a place to return to. A tiny reminder that even in a foreign country, somebody was thinking about them. And honestly, Ryuichi's cooking was never just about food. It was his way of caring. He once said something that perfectly explains his personality: "Maybe I'll just keep checking things for both of us." That mindset showed up everywhere. He checked luggage. He remembered forgotten items. He paid attention to details Riku might miss. Even the meals reflected that same care. What should she eat before practice? What would help her recover faster afterward? What would keep her healthy during exhausting training periods? Those questions lived in his mind constantly. Cooking became an act of quiet love, not dramatic love, not spoken love, just consistent love. And Riku responded in the most genuine way possible. She's naturally expressive. When she's happy, everybody knows it. She jumps around after victories, reacts honestly to emotions, and openly shows excitement. So whenever she ate Ryuichi's food, you can almost picture the smile on her face. She probably said, "This is so good," or "Please make this again." Those reactions mattered. They made him want to keep cooking. That cycle repeated over and over again for years. One person quietly caring, the other openly appreciating. And inside that small daily exchange, the foundation of Rikuryu was born. Then there was the mall. Oddly enough, the Oakville Mall became their connection to the outside world. Training and apartment life could feel suffocating, especially in a town where they barely knew anyone. So they'd leave the rink and wander through stores together, looking at clothes, browsing cosmetics, buying random household items, just normal shopping trips. But in their situation, those ordinary moments carried emotional weight. Picture it. Two Japanese skaters walking side by side through a Canadian mall while English conversations echo all around them. Employees speaking English. Shoppers from different backgrounds everywhere. And in the middle of that noise, only Riku and Ryuichi are speaking Japanese to each other. What do you think? Does this look good? It's expensive but kind of cute. Tiny conversations like that created a little island of comfort inside a sea of unfamiliarity. For Riku especially, those shopping trips probably meant more than people realized. Imagine being a teenage girl living in another country without friends or family nearby. In Japan, she might have gone shopping with classmates or relatives. In Oakville, there was only Ryuichi. So naturally, they went together. At first, maybe it was necessity. But after 7 years, necessity transformed into choice. Even when other options appeared later, they still kept doing those little routines together because it had already become part of who they were. And there's one image that perfectly captures everything about their relationship. A snowy winter evening in Oakville. Outside, the temperature is below freezing. Christmas decorations glow softly inside the mall. Riku suddenly stops in front of a store window while Ryuichi waits a few steps behind her. She turns around and says something. He answers. Then both of them laugh quietly together. Nobody around them recognizes who they are. Nobody knows they're elite athletes. Nobody knows they'll one day become world champions and Olympic medalists. To everyone else, they're just two ordinary Japanese people spending time together. And honestly, maybe that anonymity was freedom. Because inside the rink, they were always Riku and Ryuichi. Expectations followed them everywhere. Coaches watched constantly. Results mattered. Pressure never disappeared. But in the mall, none of that existed. No medals, no rankings, no expectations. Just two people walking side by side. And maybe that simple feeling, being able to exist as just two people, was one of the biggest reasons they survived 7 intense years together. The rice cooker story says everything about Ryuichi's personality too. He gave it to Riku because he wanted her to become more independent. He wanted her to eat properly and take care of herself. But she rarely used it because, honestly, she didn't need to. Ryuichi kept cooking anyway. And what's beautiful is that he never seemed angry about it. There's no story about him complaining or demanding she use it more. Instead, he simply kept showing up in the kitchen every day. Quietly. Consistently. Without needing praise. That's the kind of affection he carried. Not loud words. Not dramatic speeches. Just actions repeated every single day. When Riku Miura said, "I couldn't have made it this far without Kano-san," there was probably another sentence sitting quietly beside those words. "I couldn't have made it this far without everything Ryuichi Kihara kept doing for me every single day." Maybe it was never spoken out loud, but the meaning was there. Because after 7 years of shared lunches, grocery trips, and ordinary routines, what they built wasn't just trust on the ice. It was trust in everyday life. The kind of trust where you know someone will still be there tomorrow. The kind where you know that person will stand in the kitchen again, walk beside you again, answer your questions again, and quietly take care of you without ever asking for recognition. That daily trust eventually transformed into skating trust. This person won't let me fall. This person understands my movements. This person is skating for me. And at the very root of that trust were simple moments, packed lunches and winter shopping trips. By the time they stood on Olympic ice in Milan, Riku already knew the feeling of Ryuichi's hands before he even lifted her. She had felt those hands for years. The hands that passed her food. The hands that carried shopping bags. The hands that checked her belongings before practice. Those same hands were now catching her in the middle of world-class performances. That famous score of 158.13 points wasn't created overnight. It was built slowly through thousands of ordinary days in a town where nobody knew who they were. Two strangers entered Oakville alone, and somehow, through years of repetition, they became each other's home. There are usually two ways people react when they're completely isolated in a foreign place. Some people close themselves off emotionally. They focus only on survival, avoid attachment, and slowly retreat into loneliness. But others do the opposite. They open themselves completely to the one person standing beside them. And that's exactly what happened with Riku and Ryuichi. In a town where they had nobody else, they kept moving closer toward each other. Every meal, every shopping trip, every routine added another layer to their connection. Over 7 years, those tiny moments created what fans eventually came to know as Riku. But here's the part that matters most. What did that relationship eventually become? The answer appeared after retirement. Because even after their competitive careers ended, after the medals were won and the press conferences were over, they still returned to Oakville. Think about that for a second. They could have gone back to Japan permanently, back to family, back to their language, back to familiarity and comfort. But instead, they went back to the Canadian town where they once knew absolutely nobody. Why? Because after 7 years, Oakville wasn't foreign anymore. It had become home. And home wasn't the rink itself. It wasn't medals or coaches or training programs. Home was the routine they built together. Ryuichi standing in the kitchen every morning. Riku asking what they should eat today. The two of them walking side by side through the mall like they always had. Those repeated habits transformed an unfamiliar town into a place filled with emotional safety. Because a home isn't really a building. A home is repetition. It's the comfort of doing the same things with the same person over and over again until the routine itself becomes part of your identity. And honestly, nobody represented that stability more than Ryuichi Kihara. When he once said, "Maybe I'll just keep checking things for both of us," it sounded simple, but it perfectly summarized 7 years of his life. He checked Riku's bags. He prepared meals. He paid attention to her condition. If she struggled, he helped. If she smiled, he smiled too. That became his role naturally. But here's what's truly important. You can't check someone constantly unless you're paying close attention to them emotionally. To take care of another person, you have to notice things before they're even spoken aloud. Every single day, Ryuichi was quietly reading Riku's emotions. Was she tired today? Was something bothering her? Did she seem stressed? Did she need encouragement? Without realizing it, he spent 7 years learning how to understand her without words. And in pair skating, that ability is everything. The greatest pairs don't just execute choreography. They predict each other instinctively. They feel movements before they happen. And maybe that's why Ryuichi became so exceptional on the ice. Because long before performances, he had already trained himself to understand Riku in everyday life. Even cooking became part of that emotional reading. When he prepared food, he thought about what her body needed. Before shopping trips, he noticed what caught her attention first. Those tiny observations slowly sharpened his awareness until it naturally carried over into skating itself. So when people only see scores and medals, they miss the deeper truth. Behind every perfect lift and synchronized movement were years of ordinary human interaction. Lunches, grocery bags, mall conversations, quiet observation. That's what built their chemistry. And then there's Riku's side of the story. One of the most beautiful things about her is how openly emotional she is. She celebrates honestly. She reacts honestly. When she's happy, you can immediately feel it. But staying emotionally open like that isn't easy, especially in a foreign country. Most people slowly become guarded when they're isolated. They protect themselves by hiding feelings. But Riku never fully closed herself off. Even years later, she still reacted to joy with the same pure excitement she had when she was younger. In fact, she became even more expressive over time. Why? Because Oakville became a safe place emotionally. And Ryuichi became part of that safety. Every day there was somebody cooking for her, somebody walking beside her, somebody checking her bags and making sure she was okay. There was also Kano-san, the supportive Canadian mother figure who quietly helped them behind the scenes. Inside that environment, Riku never felt forced to hide who she truly was. She could stay emotionally honest. She could stay soft. And that emotional openness eventually became one of the biggest reasons audiences around the world connected so deeply to her performances. That's why I call this the power of ordinary life. Because the packed lunches protected her emotional warmth. The shopping trips protected her sense of comfort. And that emotional comfort eventually transformed into artistic expression on the ice. Everything connected together. Kano-san's role matters deeply here too. She wasn't just someone standing nearby. She became part of the invisible support system surrounding their lives in Oakville. Hospital visits, late-night emergencies, quiet emotional support. We don't know every detail, but after 7 years in the same town, it's impossible to believe their lives never overlapped in meaningful ways. Maybe there were nights all three shared meals together. Maybe Kano-san helped bring groceries sometimes. Maybe she joined them at the mall once in a while. The exact details don't matter as much as the feeling. She added warmth and stability to their lives in a place that once felt completely empty. And that leads to one final truth. Ironically, the loneliness of Oakville may have been the very thing that strengthened their bond the most. In a city like Tokyo, they would have had endless distractions, more friends, more teammates, more social circles, more emotional escape routes. Their dependence on each other would have been divided among many people. But in Oakville, those options barely existed. So naturally, they leaned more heavily on one another. And that dependence wasn't weakness. It became trust, deep trust. The kind built when two people realize, you're the only person I truly have here. Over 7 years, dependence slowly transformed into trust. And the clearest symbol of that transformation was something unbelievably ordinary: homemade lunches. Riku Miura depended on Ryuichi Kihara's cooking. Meanwhile, Ryuichi quietly depended on seeing Riku smile after eating it. That mutual dependence deepened the roots of their relationship little by little, day after day. The same thing happened during their shopping trips. Oakville was the kind of town where going out alone could feel isolating, especially in the beginning. But because they had each other, those lonely outings slowly became comforting memories instead. What started as, "I need this person beside me," eventually became, "I'm grateful this person exists." And when gratitude keeps building over 7 years, eventually it turns into something deeper. Maybe you can call it affection. Maybe something even stronger. Whatever name you choose, one thing is impossible to deny: 7 years of shared lunches and shopping trips created a bond too deep to explain away casually. That's why their retirement press conference felt so emotional to people watching around the world. Ryuichi broke down in tears, while Riku smiled softly beside him. And when you look at that moment through the lens of their daily life together, the meaning changes completely. Ryuichi cried because a certain kind of life was ending. The life where he could ask her every day, "What do you want to eat today?" The life where preparing meals, checking bags, and walking beside her was simply normal. That loss overwhelmed him emotionally, but Riku smiled for the opposite reason. To her, those 7 years had reached completion. Lunches, the shopping trips, the endless repetition of ordinary days, all of it finally led to Olympic glory and a complete story. Her smile carried fulfillment more than sadness, and neither reaction was more correct than the other. Both were honest. Two people looking at the exact same ending from different emotional angles. One saw loss, the other saw completion. But both reactions came from the same place: 7 years of shared everyday life. After retirement, they returned to Oakville once again. This time there were no competitions waiting for them. No pressure, no scores, just life. But honestly, the routines probably continued exactly the same way they always had. Ryuichi still standing in the kitchen, Riku still asking what they should eat. The two of them still walking through the mall together, except now those moments felt lighter, freer. The pressure of competition had disappeared, leaving only the comfort behind. That's the real reason they went back to Oakville, not because of the rink. Not because of coaches, but because that town held their normal. The normal where Ryuichi stands in the kitchen. The normal where Riku laughs naturally. The normal where they walk side by side through a shopping mall without saying much at all. Those ordinary routines became irreplaceable. And maybe that's exactly why Riku once said there was absolutely no chance she would continue skating with someone else. Because what they built over 7 years couldn't simply be recreated with another partner. You can teach technique, you can practice lifts, but you cannot manufacture 7 years of shared life. You cannot replace 7 years of